We're live. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. Got a wonderful topic today. Like we said yesterday, we're going to be covering tools. The training tools that are most commonly used here and probably in a lot of other training programs across the country. We're going to cover some very basic stuff. So, if you've been around the business for a while, this is going to be very basic for you. But I think it's always fun to do a little refresher. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining. It's good to see you. So today, we're talking about tools. But before we talk about the tools, I'm going to give you a little peek at the tools. I'm going to bring the camera down and show you the tools while everyone's joining in. And then we're going to talk a little bit before I get into the tools, okay? So here they are. I got them all here. Let's see if I can. Okay. We got the Ecollar. We'll be talking about this today. This is the Mini Educator, #1 tool. We got the Bonker. If you don't know what this is, you'll find out. We got a pet convincer. That's just air. We got a prong collar. This is a 2.25, so it's a smaller size. This is what we use most of the time. Hermspringer. Gotta be a Hermspringer. Doesn't have to be, but I prefer it. Dominant dog collar. Okay. As you can see, these ones are going to need clip-on leashes, which brings us to our leashes. We got a clip leash. We got a slip leash. Okay, this is the slip lead, English style. What's nice about this is we don't need to do products, I suppose, but what are we using? Mandota, I believe. Yeah. What I like about these is that they have this tab right here. I only have one hand to work with, so hang on a second. This tab slides down so that it keeps it around the dog's neck instead of allowing it to open up. You know what I mean? So I really like these ones. This is what we use. This is my primary tool right here, this guy. Okay? E-collar, bonker, pet convincer, prong collar, dominant dog collar, slip lead, clip lead, or leash. Okay? Back to me. Okay. Before I get into the difference, to what these tools are and how we use them and when to use one over top of the other and all that, which I will, we got to go over the big moral divide, okay? Does everybody know what that is? Let me guess. Before we talk about any of these tools, what I want you to remember first and foremost is these are not punishment devices. These are training tools. These are management tools with the ability to correct or punish, but that's not all they're used for, okay? And we're going to go over that. Now, before we go any further, I know we got a lot of new people watching the content. I know we got a lot of familiar folks, but I need to have the conversation right now because there's two different schools of thought, or probably three different schools of thought if you think of the person in the middle that just doesn't care either way. The two big schools of thought, let's say, out there are that there's only two types of people in the training world. There's really one thing that divides them, and that's where do they stand morally on punishment? That's pretty much what it comes down to, right? So if you see purely positive stuff, they won't use punishment, and I think a lot of the reason is because they morally think it's wrong, okay? Now, if you're standing on the other side of the fence and you're saying, I don't think it's morally wrong to discipline.
Sorry, I'm having trouble understanding right now. Please try a little later.
Sorry, that's Alexa. She thought I said her name again. I gotta unplug these devices, I swear to God. So it's the moral divide. What side of the fence are you standing on? Are you the type of person that thinks it's morally wrong to punish a dog? Because if you are, obviously, this isn't the video for you. If you are the type of person that does not think it's morally wrong to physically punish a dog and feels that it's natural, and heck, it's not even just natural, it's a necessity, then you're probably going to adhere better to balanced dog training, okay? So it depends on how you view the world, your beliefs, okay? I'm not telling you which one's right, and I'm not telling you which one's wrong. I'm just saying I stand on the side of the fence where I don't have a moral issue with physically disciplining my dog, okay? So therefore I do, and therefore my dog is better for it, I believe, and I do this professionally, so I teach others how to do it safely and effectively, and that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to at least be talking about it, okay? So if you're on the other side of the fence, I'm not pushing you and saying that you're wrong. I just appreciate the same respect from that side of the fence, okay? If you think it's morally wrong to punish a dog, that's okay. Just you don't have to tell me. I don't need to know, okay? Moving on. Here we go. You're looking at you're pretty much looking at any tool that I would possibly ever need other than food right on this table. But the primary tool is the Ecollar, because what we do here is an Ecollar program. So we're teaching dogs to be off leash, and in order to do that, we still got to be able to correct our dogs if they're not listening. So that's where the Ecollar comes in. Some genius developed these things, and it changed the training industry, because now all of a sudden, before these, the only way to be able to correct your dog and hold your dog accountable was with a leash, or if they were close enough to you, that you could like pick something up, right? Like the old newspaper. This changed the game. Now we have contact with our dogs up to a half a mile away. And as far as the dog's concerned, they think we can get them at anywhere. They don't know it ends at a half a mile away because the way they're trained up. So this is an extension of ourselves to our dogs, and this has been revolutionary to the way that dogs learn as far as their commands. That's why it's called the mini educator, because you teach with it. I know that everything's going to be upside down. Just giving you a look at it. But what this really is, for those of you who aren't familiar, is this is a electric collar that allows us to, sometimes these things take a while to wake up when you first turn them on. The screen's frozen. It allows you to give the dog stim, or if you want to call it shock, but there is no shock in it. This is like a muscle stimulator type of sensation. If you ever use what are those machines called, those TENS units that stimulate the muscles to relax them? Very similar technology to that. And of course this one would be, there we go. What it does is, as you turn on this kind of 10 unit feeling, I don't know if you guys can see the number, it goes 0 to 100. So it goes really, really, see if you can see that at all. Guess you can't. Yeah, there's a 0. Now you can see it there. And it goes so smoothly all the way up to 100. Now it's a very gradual feeling. You have to get one and put it on your hand. You can't tell the difference between 10 and 11 or 10 and 12. It's such a slow increase. So that allows us to really have the ability to whisper to our dogs, like barely touch them, to a little bit firmer. Everything in between, right? Till it's like a mule kick, right? But the thing is the beauty of these things is there is no electricity, right? These are waterproof. You can go in the water and use them and everything. I don't know how they work. It's genius. And it never does damage to the dog's skin because there's no electricity. This isn't a shock collar, technically. Although for simplicity's sakes, you can call it that. But it's a muscle stimulator, essentially. And it really feels tingly. And the higher it goes in numbers, it becomes even like at a higher frequency, it becomes uncomfortable. It becomes uncomfortable. I put it on my hand at high, it doesn't feel great, but you can sit there and take it. Just like you see dogs that'll take it if they learn to take it, It's not what you think it is. So if you're curious about one, they are expensive. It's like $200 for one of these things. You can get it a little cheaper, maybe like $180 or something. If you go through like a dealer like ourselves or Amazon, you might be able to get it a little cheaper. But let me tell you something. This is how this works for the novice. So this goes on the dog's neck, okay? This is the receiver. You put it on the dog's neck. All right, we generally want it on the fat muscles because it's a muscle stimulator. This isn't a bark collar. It doesn't go on the trachea, okay? It goes right there, okay? And then you got your receiver, okay? a dog who's finished on the after a program like ours, this is the way it works. Okay, you have 5 commands, and you can hold your dog accountable for doing those commands. So, if you ask your dog to go to place, you give him a chance, then he says, "No, I'm not going to go to place." You can come in and correct at a low level. Low level meaning it's not punishing, but it's a reminder. So it's like that sensation where the dog feels it, and it's like, "Hey, remember." And then they get on the place bed, you're golden, the dog's golden. If the dog doesn't get on the place bed after that warning, then you can ask again, and if he doesn't go, you can go up. And you get to decide, how high do you want to go up? I mean, there's so much, it's such a spectrum of what this feels like from 0 to 100. You get to decide depending on how the dog's treating you and how the dog's behaving. If the dog's confused, this is another thing that we get. Like, in the teaching process, if a dog's confused, there's no better tool to teach him where to go than this, and there's no punishment involved. So we'll get to that. I'll teach you that this is a teaching tool first before it's a punishing tool, right? So, but the thing is this is how it works. You ask the dog to do something, they decide not to. You give a mild sensation on the neck. It's a low level correction, but it's not really punishment. And if you use these things, you know what I mean. The dog, it doesn't really do anything to the dog besides give him a warning. Now, if the dog decides not to go on the second time, you're going to correct a little firmer and then ask again, all while keeping your composure. You're not yelling at a dog. You just tell him to go to place. Third time, this is worst case scenario. The dog's like, "No, I'm not going to place." This doesn't happen after, maybe once for you, but then once the dog realizes you follow through, this isn't a common thing. Right? This can happen once or twice, but so then you ask the dog a third time and they don't go on, and you're going to give them something that they care about. Simple as that. And every dog's different as far as the numbers. And what's going to happen is you're going to see that dog run to the place bed. And all that was a conversation like we talk about all the time. You entered a conversation with your dog. You said, "Hey, animal that I feed and buy everything for and let you live in my house amongst my children and everything. Hey, I need you to do something right now." And then the animal's like, "No." And then you were like, "Well, actually, I have a way to hold you accountable, just like the police have a way of holding me accountable to drive proper on the highway, So I can say, yes, with a correction, go to the place bed, and the dog will go. And now that the dog knows that that's on the table, they're not messing with it. They're not messing with it. Dogs aren't dumb. They really only want to be comfortable. They want to be having fun. They're not interested in those conversations once they know that they're a real thing. So you'd have to show them by following through. So that's how it works with this. Anytime we say, "Hey, Fido, come," and Fido says, "Nope," you can go, bing, and then Fido's going to come, right? Or you could say, "Down," and the dog's like, "Nope." Or they're just not listening because they're paying attention to something else. You can start at that low level, get their attention, ask them to down again. If they do, great, you're good. But if they don't, you can go into punishing levels. You can. But do you always use it at punishing levels? No, most of the time, especially through the training process, most of the time it's not punishing levels. And we'll get to the training process with this too, because I know people are curious. But finished dog, you ask them to do one of the 5 commands. If they don't, you can correct and get what you want every time, and then it becomes easier because the dog stops pushing. Now, that's cool. Another thing you can correct for is unwanted behaviors. So if a dog barks, everybody, I'm gonna back up and say, punishment scientifically, if you punish a behavior while it's happening, it's less likely to happen again. It's gonna decrease in frequency, right? If you reward it, and in this case, barking is self-rewarding, it's more likely to happen in the future. So what we do is we apply punishment. So the dog barks, and then you can say no and give a punisher that you think is fit. Okay, knowing the dog and knowing the collar, and hopefully you're making a responsible choice. But the thing is with that, you don't necessarily have to give a warning, although you could. So the first time you could give a little warning. You could say no and give something mild, okay? But then you're going to want to go set it up. You're going to want to set this up so that you're having somebody knock on the door so that you can have a controlled experience. This is what the professionals would call it, a controlled experience, where the dog thinks somebody's knocking at the door because somebody is, but it's not an organic experience. It's not a real, it's not an experience from the outside world. It was one that we planned. So these are called setups. So we're setting up a dog to be in this situation so that we can change the way that it responds. Okay, so knock, knock, knock. The dog barks. This time, the second time, no, firmer correction. Okay, see how you do it? Okay, and then let the dust settle. Okay, the dog relaxes, have the person go away. Again, somebody knock on the door 5 minutes later or something, 30 seconds later, depending on the dog. Bark, 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 firmer if you have to. But here's the thing, is it doesn't happen like that. If it does happen, a dog make you do it 3 times, they're not going to do it tomorrow. It's not like this is happening. The belief is like you're just going to be shocking this dog and correcting this dog all the time. If you're doing this right, you have 1 or 2 conversations about a specific thing that the dog's doing wrong, and then they stop pushing the boundary. It just goes away. And that's why it works. That's why companies like ours are very busy, because it does work. And you're not always going to have to be on your dog like that if you do it right, because the dog will just learn. They'll just learn. Okay, these are the new rules. So you can stop unwanted behaviors. Yep, it's really good at that. You can teach new behaviors with it, which we're going to get to. And you can hold the dog accountable for their commands. That's great. Also, state of mind training. If you have state of mind training with your dog from the place that it was trained, low level stims will tell your dog to relax. So if your dog's in a down already and you just want to silently tell them to relax, there's plenty of moments where you just want to relax your dog while you're in a conversation. I go to something low, the dog feels that very, very barely noticeable sensation, knows that means to relax more, and you see the dog relax. And it's just another way to talk to your dog. We're going to get into teaching with this and how I can give you an example. To me, this is the best. This is the best tool for any problem, because I've been using it so long. And I was hesitant to use this when I first started dog training, because I started dog training before I used the Ecollar, right? Then when I used this, I didn't want to use it at first, but then I grew to really appreciate what it's done. Can it be used to help leash reactivity? Yes, absolutely. Best tool for it. Here's my favorite setup for a dog with leash reactivity. Okay, they got a little knowledge on this bad boy. We got the T on this side and the 2 S's on this side. So these S's stand for stim. This is how you correct a dog based off from the number that's on the screen, which gives you the intensity. You get to choose the intensity. I know you can't see the numbers too well, guys. I'm sorry. I'm trying. Okay, 0 all the way to 100. It's slow. So the T is the recall. That tone, it stands for tone, okay? What's great about this is that it beeps on the collar. Of course, this collar would be dead, right, Jules? I grabbed the dead collar. It beeps. So I can literally hit that. It'll beep on the dog's collar, and that'll tell him to recall. If he doesn't recall, then I can correct and hold him accountable for the recall. So we always can get our dog back to us. That's the most important thing with a dog who has leash reactivity. Once it goes away from you and starts doing its shit, can you correct it for doing that and then successfully get it back to you? Because if you can stop leash reactivity. Now the next step is, now that I know that I can go beep and my dog runs back to me after reacting, or better yet, I can correct for reacting and then beep and recall the dog back to me and say, hey, bud, well, why'd you do that silly behavior? Now I can walk by these dogs again and again and again and let him do whatever he wants, because I know how to do controlled experiences, of course, where he feels like he's free, but I have control as much as I possibly can. He reacts in a negative way, explodes at the dogs, correct, recall. Hey man, what happened? That wasn't every time he does that, he's learning that choice ends in an aversive that he wants to now avoid. So now he's realizing, okay, that sensation only happens when I try to react to these other dogs. If I walk by these dogs and I don't react, which he's going to do the second or third time, historically dogs take 1, 2 to 3 times of being corrected for the same behavior, and then you see them start to understand it's correlated for something this intense. Now we walk by the 4th time, and he's like, he wants to, but he's not. He wants to, but he's not. And I'm not correcting anything. I know his mind shit. I know that. But I'm not correcting that. I'm letting him realize if you don't engage with them, there is no correction. So he gets a successful walk by. Now in his mind, all in the past 5 to 10 minutes, if I react, this sensation could happen, which I want to avoid. If I don't react, all I hear from my owner is that I did a good job, and there is no aversive. What do you think starts happening to the dog's brain if we start to set that up on a daily basis? By the end of the week, your dog's not reacting anymore. It's just how it goes. Okay? That's science, right? And so, hello, everybody. Hey, Roots K9. So this is a tremendous tool. Now let's talk about teaching with this tool. Let me tell you something. Imagine this. A dog can't understand English. Wow. That makes it difficult to teach them, right? let me give you a little example of the pressure on and pressure off system with this so that you can teach a dog where to be, okay? You want a dog to go onto the place bed. Believe it or not, dogs, they either don't know how to get on a place bed. They have no idea what you're saying to them when you're saying get on the place bed, right? Imagine if there was this little sensation on the neck, just a tingle that turned on, that was just humming in the background after you said place. You said place, and then all of a sudden, tingle. And once the dog gets on the bed, it turns off. He steps back off, it turns on. Steps back on, it turns off. This is what this provides for us. We can we can say when this sensation's on, it means you have yet to complete the task. When it turns off, you did it. That's pressure on, pressure off. That is such a awesome layer of information that we can give the dog to speed up the process of teaching, versus like just holding the leash pressure down or whatever, or just luring and having to do all these reps. There's so many reps to get the dog to learn to get on there. You'd be surprised if you start adding this just humming in the background. This isn't a punishing level. It just isn't. The dog will let you know if it's a punishing level or not. If the dog feels it but just doesn't care, but it knows it's there, that's called a working level. And that'll change depending on the dog's arousal. The higher adrenalized the dog is, they're not going to feel those low numbers. And there's all this stuff you got to learn. But if the dog can feel that number, you say a command, you guide them into the command, then you turn this off. Essentially, yeah, you're teaching them better because this is helping them, but you also can get rid of the leash because this is going to be the sensation that gives them the information they need. This mixed with your body language. So you're creating an off-leash dog. So again, the end product is you just ask one of the commands. If the dog is non-compliant, you can start with one of those low-level taps, and that just reminds the dog to do one of the commands. So it's nice and easy. Okay, you can stop all the unwanted behaviors that your dog does, which, God, that's useful. And you can also, it also got a light on it too. I'm going to plug this in, let it charge so I can show you some of the features. And while I do that, I'm going to get over to one of these other tools here. Any questions on the Ecollar? This is a great, great tool. The recall, you can't beat an Ecollar recall. It's just the best. It's probably the most reliable. It's got to be the most reliable out there. Okay, so that Ecollar was dead. Anyway, I needed to charge it. Now, then there's this. This is the Bonker. We're going to get this one out of the way too. We're going to talk about this. We're getting all the big bad ones we're talking about right away. Because if you haven't watched from the beginning, I gave a little debriefing of the moral standpoint of whether or not you think it's morally wrong to punish a dog physically, or if you stand on the side of the fence where you don't think it's morally wrong to punish and discipline a dog, you actually think that that's part of your responsibility as a dog owner. Now, if you stand on the other side where you think it's morally wrong to physically punish a dog, obviously this stuff isn't going to be for you, and I'm not telling you you're wrong, and I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that we don't need to tell each other how we feel. Okay? Because it's not what matters. What matters is that we're helping the people that reach out to us. Okay? So, this is the Bonker. This is a rolled up bath towel with rubber bands on the end. A trainer by the name of Gary Wilkes, who is probably one of the, he's a legend amongst dog trainers. He's been around for, I don't know exactly the time period. I know he was around in the 80s. He did a lot. He's done a lot for the training world. And if you're not following him and you're a trainer or even just an owner, I would go follow him on Facebook. And he's on all social media. I know he's on Facebook. The guy knows his shit, and he's a great resource for everything. But this is one of the coolest things that I got from him, other than his brain and being able to learn from him. This is a rolled up towel. You know what this mimics? The old newspaper on the snout, the old rolled up magazine on the snout from the 50s, when that's how they would punish their dogs, right? That's essentially, and go watch Gary. Gary knows, he'll tell you exactly how to make one of these, and he'll tell you exactly how to use it. But brilliant idea. Now a lot of trainers use this because, again, you can, listen, this is my hand, listen. Okay? Listen. That's a firm hit. That's about what you would do. That ain't going to hurt the dog. And I'm thinking that's a big dog. I'm thinking that's like a close to 100, 70, 60, 100-pound dog. Not a 4-pound dog. Okay, so that's on the snout, man. And this is a terrific tool to have around the house for barking, jumping, over just aroused nonsense where the dog's just running around. Just knock it off. No, and then you can either throw this at the dog, or you can give him a little bop, a little bonk on the snout, and then of course follow through with your. You always have to follow through with your calm, assertive energy, if you will. That's the Cesar Millan. I'm using that terminology lately, the old Cesar Millan stuff, because it worked. And I'll find I definitely describe it in different ways. But today we'll use calm, assertive energy, right? You have to be calm, but you have to be assertive and be ready to take control. But you're calm, folks. Okay, I do a lot of in-homes, and when you tell people to be a little bit more assertive, you see frustrated, you see panicky, you see jittery, and you're like, nope, that's not the right combination. That's not that magic combination. The magic combination is calm but assertive. You got to figure that out. Watch Cesar Millan, okay? He knows. You watch his body language. You watch the way he does it, and then you can pick it up. Okay. So that's how you finish every correction. All right. So let's say the dog's barking at the door. Of course, this is how I would prefer you to do it. You say, "I'm going to work on the dog barking on the door." So then you make one of these, and then you do a setup. You don't wait for the real thing, because then nobody's ready and it's all freaking weird. The dog's the only one that thinks it's the real thing. You have a friend, you have a relative, you have somebody who lives in the house. Come to the door, knock on the door, pretend that you are a stranger. And when the dog barks, you're there to say no. This is behind your back, preferably, so that the dog's not perseverating on it afterwards. You can either throw this at the dog, go watch Gary Wilkes, he'll show you how to do it, or you can just give him a whap on the snout. Either way, after that, you're going to go up to the dog and push them away with your body, away from the door, and then you're going to use that spatial pressure and social pressure with that eye contact, disagreeing with your dog. No, this door is not for you, until you see a bit of your dog relax. That's called submission, just a little bit. You'll see him just give it up a little bit. Then you can walk away. Okay? And then guess what we're doing? Knock again, right? Back to the door, this again. Okay? Same process. Push him away with your body. You watch Cesar Millan, you see him doing it all the time, except he's not using the bonker, right? But you see the way he pushes dogs with his body by walking into them. That's what you want to be watching, that kind of stuff. Watch how he looks at them. Watch how he disagrees. And then watch, the most important thing to watch is when he thinks it's okay to walk away from the dog. And it's always when the dog relaxes a little bit, somehow softens, which means that the dog's given up that position, that powerful position, and is letting you take control. And you reward that by walking away. The reward in that moment is me leaving you alone, is ending the confrontation. So you learn, if you don't want confrontation, stay in this space where you're not being interactive. You're just staying back here and relaxing. And that's what the dog does. Go to time 3. This is almost every time, by the 3rd time, 4th time. You knock on the door, the dog doesn't do anything. They don't know what to do. They look at the door, then they look at you. This is the best case scenario. And you say, good. And they just learned in that moment, they just had their successful rep, because they have to have a successful rep to learn what to do. You don't want to create a confused dog. Okay? So, and yes, and listen, these tools can get a bad rap because people do it wrong. It's just as simple as that. So where was I with that? Oh yeah. So, the dog's learned the right way now. And now we're just going to repeat that. Maybe we'll repeat it later on that day, or maybe we'll repeat it tomorrow. You'll see the dog might hiccup a little bit just because they're pattern, but then they'll remember. And as you do this, a week, do it for a week, do setups, and you're going to notice your dog's not going to be making the mistake anymore. And then you can do real life. And I know that sounds like work. I know. Because it is work, but that's what we do here at the Board and Train, and it works. We have to teach these dogs. We have to hold their hand to some degree and put them through these very controlled, specific experiences so that they change the way that they behave. And that's what the real training is. We're not simply just putting her on place and then telling her not to get off in place, which you can do. But I want to address, that will come next. I want to address the barking and the rushing of the door before I start to use place. Because if they're not on place, they're barking and rushing out the door. But if you do it this way and then you teach place, they won't be barking and rushing out the door. In fact, they might even just go get on the place bed in association to this event in the future. Okay? So here's another big one. Here's another big one right here. Prong collar. This has helped so many dogs. It's not even funny. As far as pulling, people can literally have a dog that pulls terribly, not know anything about training. Go get one of these, watch the right YouTube video, and the dog's not pulling anymore. Like you gotta know how to use it a little bit. It's not just to put on and let your dog run into these and just slow them down a little bit. If you really put a little bit of time into it, just like an hour into watching the proper person teach you how to use this, you're gonna be golden. All right? This is wonderful. Now let's talk about how this works here. And I'm going to get to questions right after I get done with this one. Okay? Prong collar. This goes around the dog's neck. Here's the prongs. You can see how this works. As I take the leash up, which I'm going to get on, it'll tighten. You see? Let me tell you how this works. This tool will stop. If you know what you're doing with the right dog, you can stop a dog who's been pulling for like half a decade and just end it in 15 minutes. Okay? All right. So, that looks terrible. Well, here's the thing. This allows us to make pulling uncomfortable because science says that if you make it uncomfortable, it's less likely to happen. And the goal is to stop the dog from pulling. There's no workaround. The only other workaround, and I'm going to be honest with you because I cover all angles, is to have something. So there's two ways to motivate a dog to do something or to stop something. There's only two ways, okay? You're either going to motivate them by having them, they're motivated to do something so that they can avoid a consequence that they don't want to happen. So you can use avoidance, or you can use earn. You do this to earn this. So I'm either going to use avoidance or I'm going to use to earn or bribe a dog or whatever. Trade. That's it. That's all it is. This is not using the food. So this is going to be using the punishment, okay? The only other way to get your dog by your side consistently is to use a reward. So you would constantly have a ball. You see these guys with their ball right here, and that's how they keep their dog there, right? You throw that ball away, okay? Here's why I don't like this, the ball or the food. Because it keeps the dog, because we do state of mind training. In sports dogs and stuff like this, they do it in a different way. So they want the dog drivey a little bit. So these methods work really good if you want your dog just a little engaged and drivey and ready to rock and roll, which is the opposite of what we want. So we've got to watch what we use. If we take a resource that the dog wants and we say, if you walk nicely, you can have this when we're done, the dog's just going to think about the reward the whole time, and the dog's going to be anxious and in a bad space, okay? Unless you've done your work. If you've done your work, you won't need that ball. You won't need that ball because you can use punishment to just say, hey, it doesn't matter what you want right now. Just walk. We're just walking somewhere. Just stay in your heel, okay? Don't worry about the ball. Don't worry about anything. We are traveling to a place to then play ball. We're not thinking about the ball on the car ride. We're not throwing the party on the car ride. Okay, when we get there, we'll throw the party. So you have to be able to use discipline. So that's where this thing comes in. Of course, I'm an Ecollar fan, right? So you guys see me, I don't really use this because I like the Ecollar so much. I tend to just use that. But when you're training up a dog, you can use a combination of both. You can send a dog home on a combination of both. I've definitely done it in the past, and I've seen people do it. And we still do it. But even if you don't have an Ecollar, this is how this works. You let the dog, this is the process. You walk out to your street or somewhere safe where there's not a lot of cars, maybe not the street. And you start walking the dog, and the dog's going to you're not going to tell it to heel, okay? That's going to be mistake number one. The dog doesn't know heel, it's not going to heel, okay? It's not. What you're going to do is you're going to go after the behaviors, the biggest of annoyance and the biggest of dangerous degree, whatever, first, and then you're going to go and ask for the command. So pulling, that's the whole wham trying to pull you down. We're going to go after that first because that's the most dangerous. That's the thing that we're going to go after first, and that allows the dog to go and make these big movements. So we're not just holding the dog still and frustrating it. So let's let it do that. So we walk straight. The dog goes out in front of us. The leash is only 6 feet long. We have it in our hand. Right as the dog is about to hit the end of the leash, we take a turn, which is a 180, so now we're heading in the other direction, and we give this a little pop on our way so that the dog hits the end of the leash, gets a little pop, and then turns around. And by the time the dog turns around, it sees your back walking in the other direction. This is important. You don't say anything to the dog. No, you don't. This is the Keeler method. William Keeler. He was an older trainer, and this is where I learned this from. Don't say anything to the dog. Don't say anything on the leash. So you're not saying anything verbally, and you're not saying anything with the leash because it's loose. You're letting the dog go out in front, and then you're sneaking away and popping as they are about to hit the end of the leash. This is why this is important. If you are not saying to the dog a warning that we're going to turn, and the leash can't give him any information that you're going to turn because it's loose, the only way he can know that you're going to turn is if he watches you. So he's going to go out a few times. He's going to go out another time. He's going to hit the end of the leash, get that pop, turn around and see your back again. What he's going to end up doing is, if you keep doing this, he's going to end up hanging around you. Not in a heel perfectly, but not too far out, and more towards, so he can see where you're going. So maybe even slightly parallel to you or slightly behind. You'll see dogs just snap into a freaking heel after this because they're like, okay, we're attached, and obviously this guy just goes in whatever direction he wants to, and if I don't pay attention to him, I don't know which direction he's headed in. As soon as the dog's in that space, that's when I start to talk with the leash a little bit and start to say, hey, now that you're paying attention and you want to figure out how to do this together, let me show you a little bit, and I'll try to just encourage the left side, and I'll start to teach not to go out ahead. Maybe I'll start to teach that first, and then we work on that for 5-10 minutes. And next thing you know, the dog's got a little bit of an understanding. He's no longer a crazy guy because he went and got that energy out and finds out what happens when you hit the end of the leash. Now he's not so curious about it, so he's just dialed in and he's learning. And then at the end, very good boy, break. Release the dog, let the dog shake it off. Let the dog shake it off, pet the dog. Hey, how you doing, buddy? Connect with the dog. Let the dog have a potty break, do a little intermission, and then maybe try it again. And then give the dog a break and work on something the next day. Because this is just incremental learning experiences until the dog is fully developed. Okay, but that's the primary way is to use pops. Pop every time the leash gets tight. So the dog learns not to get this tight, because if this gets tight, pop, right? You got to be consistent. It works. Now, that's the primary way of using this. I mean, you can use this, and I have seen it done, and I've done it in the past. You can use this tool instead of the e-collar to stop things like jumping and barking and all that. So if your dog jumps or won't settle, you can kind of give a little pop just to, no, disagree with that jump. Anytime the dog starts to go up, you can just pop and tell your dog no, and that does give a consequence. That works for a lot of dogs. You can use this with all the commands as well. So like I said, the 5 commands, if your dog's on leash trained, this is what it means. You're going to need a setup like this. So when you say sit and they don't sit, you can give a mild correction, which is, it's not on the e-collar, it's dialed up the intensity. Here, it's your hand, it's your wrist. You give them just a mild pop instead of a firmer pop. So you're in control, just like on the e-collar, okay? So you can say sit, the dog doesn't sit. Sit, the dog doesn't sit. Bam, something firmer, and the dog sits. Good. But you always give that warning first, you don't always have to give the warning first. If you feel like the dog's really giving you attitude, of course, you can go to the firm one first. But there's that fair process that I like to use just so we know that the dog's not confused and that we're addressing attitude, where you can give that little one first, and then if they don't listen, then you can give a proper. Okay? Same thing with like a down with this. And this isn't what I do these days as much, but it's good to know. If you're telling your dog to down and it's in a sit, you can just drop the leash and give a little pop downwards. The dog slides into it down, right? You can teach with this thing. You can teach sit, pressure on, pressure off, just like the e-collar, right? So if I say sit and pressure's on at a low level, this wouldn't be high intensity to the dog. It's just barely touching. We're not cranking on them. We're just barely pushing up, right? And you can control how firm you push up. And then you give guidance to the butt. The butt goes down. This goes away. Now, this is the source of pressure that's telling the dog that it did it right. So this is saying when you feel this sensation, you have yet to complete. But once you sit, you've completed it. Good boy, right? And so same with place. You could say place and then guide the dog. And once they're on place, the pressure goes away. Now, this is your source of pressure versus the e-collar, which is still charging. So I'll show you the features when it's done. And then you can see people who use a combination of both. So you can have the e-collar as your primary stim, but then you kind of have this to guide, because this is a really good guiding tool. The prong is really good at giving direction. Do I want you to go left? Do I want you to go right? Do I want you to go up? Do I want you to go down? That's what this is very good with. So you can actually pair this with the e-collar and actually have the e-collar stim on, but then using this as the guidance to tell your dog where to go. Okay, and that's very, 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 very common. There you go. The big controversial tool. There's 2 of them right out of the way. 3 of them. The Bonker too. My God. While we're on the collars, this is a dominant dog collar. Dominant dog collar is kind of like a slip lead, honestly. We looked at the old slip leads. Everybody knows what these slip leads are the best. It just simply tightens as you pull, but it has that notch to stop it where you want to. So as I pull up, it tightens, you see? And then as I release, it loosens. It's supposed to. There it goes. As I release, it loosens. See? Okay, that's a slip lead. Same thing with the dominant dog collar, but why would you use the dominant dog collar? This is going to be really snug, really high up here, and this is for those really bad reactive or aggressive dogs, because this is just going to give you a little bit more firm of a grip on a dog right here than the slip lead, and it's going to happen quicker, and it's going to be attached to a clip instead of, obviously the slip is just one line. Okay, look. Same stuff here. It's basically a slip lead, right? The purpose of this is when a dog is going to try to attack another dog, or going to try to flip out and be crazy, or going to try to attack you, when you put pressure up, it takes away the oxygen. That's just the truth. It just goes. So the dog's like, I'm going to be aggressive, and you go wink, and the dog's like, I'm aggressive, I'm not aggressive, and then you let him down. That's it. And then if he goes aggressive again, back up. Oh, I'm not aggressive anymore, and back down. Okay? Obviously, this isn't something you're going to want to try without a professional, or at least looking it up. There's a lot more to it than that little demonstration with my hand pretending to be a dog. But essentially, the difference between this, and why I would use this over top of this, or even a slip lead in replace of the dominant dog collar, is because this dog with this on, there's a chance that it's going to strike at me or something else, and that's why it's got this on. Because with this, I can't take away oxygen. You try to, go ahead. Your dog starts to flip out and starts to bite at you or another dog, and you go like this, all of a sudden you just got to bite a dog. You cannot choke a dog with a prong collar. They don't stop, they get worse. So this stops them fast, and it keeps everybody safe, and we get to reset, put the dog back down, let them catch their breath, let's go again. This is a dominant dog collar, hence the name, right? It's for dominant dogs. It's for dogs that are going to be aggressive towards people and dogs. And this little handle up, take them off their front 2 feet. Once they learn that process, the first time's always the worst because they have no idea how to turn it off. But then they learn, if you relax, it turns off. You can see a dog literally start to feel that pressure go up and just relax. And it's part of that state of mind training as well. So this is for the dogs that could possibly be very dangerous. Same with the slip lead. Sometimes all you can get on is a slip lead. You can't get on that dominant dog collar. So you get the slip lead on. The only trick with the slip lead that I'll let you guys know now that I didn't know for the first year of using one, you got to watch what direction it feeds it out of. So if we're doing on the left side, this is great. If I have the dog on this side, it's going to feed out towards me. Now, if I flip this and I have the dog on that side, look how it doesn't feed as well, right? It wants to go out that way. So to make sure that it's feeding right, that's going to give it that release so it doesn't get stuck. So if I have pressure on a dog and then I take the pressure off, it releases. Okay? That's the slip lead. Slip lead's the same thing as a dominant, except I use this more for training as well. I just use this instead of the prong collar a lot of the times, and you can use this the same way as a prong collar. You can do pressure up and pressure down, except you just know that the pressure's coming from a different source. It's coming from the tension of the rope rather than the prongs. Okay? So But still, pressure on, pressure off, you can teach a dog with that as well. So you can start to see how we can start to teach a dog pretty effectively. This is a cool little one that I just added for fun. I don't use it all the time, but there was a time that I was using this thing a lot just because I was doing in-homes and it was effective. This is a pet convincer. This is air via a CO2, right? It's just air. That's all it is. There's a sound that's emitted that's really loud that can kind of get a dog to startle, but then it's just air, okay? So watch. You hear how loud that is? It's really high hissing, right? So that can, if a dog jumps on you, bing, it works. But you don't want a dog to be confused, so you have to back it up with your social afterwards. No. So the dog says, whatever that just was, it was him. It was the person. So I don't have to worry that it was just this weird thing in the environment. That happened because you jumped on me. Now what I'm going to do immediately afterwards is tease the dog a little. I'm not going to tell it to jump on me, but I'm going to get excited around it to try to see if it'll jump again so that I can tell him again not to jump, but lighter. Just, hey, no. So that the dog can now learn it's the jumping that causes the consequence. And then you'll notice the dog won't jump, and instead maybe it'll sit, and then you say good, and you pet it on the head. And now you successfully just had a conversation where you said, if you jump, this could potentially happen, and it's because you jumped, but if you feel the need to jump but instead sit, I will pet you on the head. And that's a relationship that you're forming with that dog. And you hold that true for the next few days, and now that's how that dog's going to start greeting you the next week or so. Okay? So this can stop crate nonsense. Sometimes you can just go in and say no and then give it a little spritz and follow through. If it doesn't work immediately, it's not going to work. Some dogs it works with tremendously. My dog Riggins, he would rather have an e-collar correction. He'd rather have any one of these things on the table than this. This is a thing that for some reason he associates it with, like, that's terrible. So if I really needed it, this would be the tool for him. It works with a lot of dogs. It can stop barking. It can stop, probably puppy biting. Everyone complains about the puppies biting, but it's just going a little too rough. One of these is a good thing to snap a dog out of a behavior, and then you follow through socially where you let them know you disapprove. Hey, don't do that. Knock it off. Let them go back after they calm down, and if they do it again, boom, just to show them. It's going to take, especially with puppies, it's going to take a few times where this behavior causes this outcome. Okay, so don't do this behavior. But then you see that the dog gets it and doesn't go after it. Good. Don't go after the clothes on the child. Don't rip on don't go to a certain intensity and play. This little tool, if it works on your dog, it's going to work. Okay, if it doesn't work, you'll know within the first 30 seconds because you'll spritz it and the dog will just be like, so, and then you'll say, okay, we'll move to something else. So we did it. We covered a lot of the tools. I think I got enough charge on this bad boy now. I got to wrap up. I know that. But I want to show you there's a light feature on this thing. Very cool. And I also wanted to show you the beep. So when I hit that T, remember I told you that's okay. That's what the dog hears, and that means recall. That means come. And then we can hold them accountable here. So no matter how far away they are, if you're on a hiking trail and you're yelling to your dog, which is already sucks, they might not hear you. And now it doesn't matter because up to a half a mile away, that means recall. Okay? Just another bell and whistle, baby. Great tool. Okay, guys. We did it. We covered the tools. I made it through all of them. I don't think I missed much. Leave any questions that you guys have down below. Again, I know about the moral dispute, and I'm very aware of it. So I'm talking to people who want to learn from me, who don't have a moral issue with punishing their dogs. Okay? Great tools here. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you guys. We got to get going because what are we doing today? We're going all the way to Frederick early. This is why we started an hour early, and I appreciate you guys coming on. And we're bringing a dog leash reactivity, a dog pity up to Frederick to walk by all these dogs, and it's really severe. He's got the real deal. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of just overwhelmed, just nastiness and stress whenever he sees other dogs on the walk. It's really terrible. It's Tank. If you're not following Tank, He's from South Carolina. He traveled up here for this. He's a great dog, but he's got terrible leash reactivity, and it's very unhealthy for his mind. And today, we're going to go start tackling that. So we're going almost an hour away, 40 minutes away, to a city that Julie has a house in, which is Frederick, Maryland. Fantastic place for dogs. There are dogs everywhere misbehaving. There's dog parks, so we're going to be putting him through the ringer and see how he does. There'll probably be a video for you guys by the end of the day. I appreciate you guys. Again, any further questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.